What's going on, everybody? Sorry about that. Dropped my remote. What's going on, everybody? Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. My name is Kevin Smith. Thank you so much for tuning into Loud Majority Live. We got a jam-packed show for you guys today. A suspicious package was discovered outside of Gracie Mansion. Yet again, I guess this is just the way New Yorkers have to live now. I guess that's what happens when you elect a terrorist sympathizer to be your mayor, which we'll show you in just a minute. Also, President Trump presses John Thune to pass the SAVE Act, even though he seems like he has absolutely no intention of doing so. Why would he want to do that? It's only something that the American people want. It's only something that the American people need. We've got a runoff in Georgia today for Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat. Very important election. We're going to talk about that real quick. And a nice story out of Australia showing what the asylum process is actually meant to be for, not just for people whose country sucks. But before we get started, guys, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. Share the video out all over the place. We are rocking, we are rolling. Before we even get into anything today, I would be remiss if I did not mention that today is 6 months since Charlie Kirk was taken from us. Taken from us far too soon in front of the eyes of the entire world. A lot's happened in 6 months. A lot of divisiveness. A lot of change in the political climate. A lot of where do we go from here? A lot of very bad people have risen as a lot of good people get questioned. I could go all day. I could go all day long about the names of those people, but I would just remind everyone that Charlie had a mission, and I've been thinking about it a lot today. It's wild how quick 6 months goes by. In the context of just regular life, you don't really notice, day by day, week by week goes by. But when you can put a moment in that, it's pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts that it's been 6 months. I swear every day that something happens, whether it's this war in Iran or oil prices or Candace Owens, who, if it wasn't for this, would have nothing to talk about because she's a ravenous bitch who I hope awful things happen to. I often wonder what he would think, what he'd be saying, what he'd be doing. So, just think about that today a little bit. 6 months, almost to the minute. Almost to the minute that I had to come on this show and have what can only be described as one of the worst shows of my life. So, just something to think about today as we go over the myriad of bullshit going on in the world, whether it's my communist mayor who decided to dine with a terrorist or an actual terrorist or, the fact that we had a 12-hour oil crisis that everyone thought was going to end the world or, any of the other myriad things that in the context of everything, sometimes it feels like it doesn't matter, but it does. So that's where we'll start today. Miss you, Charlie. Absolutely, bro. Just something to think about today. So we've got some breaking news at the top of the show. There was an officer shot in Baltimore outside of a synagogue. We just got updates from the press on that. An officer had been shot in an active shooter incident in Baltimore, Maryland. The suspect in the shooting was also shot. The officer suffered non-life-threatening injuries. The incident took place on the 6200 block of Park Heights Avenue outside of the Agudath Israel of Baltimore synagogue at around 12:30 p.m. The officer was taken into shock trauma. Officers said to avoid the surrounding area after the incident took place. The status of the suspect was not yet made clear. The Baltimore City Fraternal Order of Police said that all members of the shooting are in good spirits. The Baltimore police said in an email to Fox News that the shooting was not at the synagogue or at the religious institution, but it just happened to be in the location of it. So that's good to hear. I guess you can I guess you could take some happiness in that. We'll bring you any of the updates on that as we go. Also, we got to go from an active officer-involved shooting in Baltimore to a suspicious package found outside of the mayor's home, again, in New York City. Here was the footage from that. So those were the scenes outside of Gracie Mansion. It has since been cleared of all scenes, but, day after a terrorist attack in New York City, a terrorist attack, mind you, that CNN decided to report in a very strange way. So much so that they actually had to admit fault after they were torched about a bizarre post. Following the shooting, this from Fox News. CNN is facing backlash on social media after a now deleted Tuesday post on X about two Pennsylvania teenagers who were charged with throwing bombs at a protest near Gracie Mansion on Saturday. The post read, and I don't know, I'm having a difficult time even understanding why they would word it this sort of way, but this is just kind of what they do. Two Pennsylvania, this was the actual post they put up. Two Pennsylvania teenagers crossed into New York City Saturday morning for what could have been a normal day enjoying the city during abnormally warm weather. But less than an hour later, their lives were dramatically changed as the pair would be arrested for throwing homemade bombs during an anti-Muslim protest outside of Zohran Mamdani's home. Kind of makes it seem like they were arrested after bombs were thrown at them while they were counter-protesting an anti-Muslim riot. They were then torched on social media. The post has now been deleted, and CNN followed up with an explanation. A post regarding two individuals arrested for throwing homemade bombs outside of Zohran Mamdani's house failed to reflect the gravity of the incident, thereby breaching editorial standards we require for all of our reporting. It has therefore been deleted. First off, let's be clear, you have no standards. You have no editorial standards. Have you seen your show? Which, you basically will just put any idiot on television who will talk into a microphone. Social media users were quick to call out CNN's bizarre framing of the incident, which failed to mention the word terror or terrorist in any way in the post. The weirdest framing ever, watching an Examiner columnist Tim Carney wrote on X. The major left-leaning outlets hate this story, but they know they can't ignore it. So they go to bizarre contortions. That's exactly what they did. And everyone was hitting them. And it's this kind of stuff that bothers me. Because, look, CNN's going to have their opinion and they're going to have their left-wing host. and they're going to have Abby Phillip, who's a victim in America, even though she went to Harvard. They're going to have all of those things, and we know that. The problem lies when real world incidents. You want to go one way on abortion or guns or the war or Trump or whatever. You want to have your opinions on that. That's one thing. But to not inform the 97 people that watch CNN about the true reality on the ground, that two homegrown jihadists tried to throw a bomb at Americans protesting, is a bit of a problem. It's a bit of a problem because right now, I promise you this. I promise you right now there are people in this country who do not know that these two who were arrested were the terrorists. They do not know. Journalist Scott Bertram mocked the Post after rewriting it to reflect the events of September 11th. 19 men arrived at East Coast airports on Tuesday for what could have been a normal day enjoying a cross-country flight. But in less than an hour, their lives would drastically change. Yeah, that, first off, Scott Bertram, 100% right there. Joking about what CNN would write as their headline following the 9/11 attacks if it were to happen today. Of course, because none of them can just say the reality out loud. None of them can just say the obvious out loud. Barstool sports writer Jack Mack wrote, "Man, you gotta hate it when two teenagers who could have been enjoying a warm day have their life drastically changed because they accidentally brought homemade bombs that could have killed multiple people. Oops, I did some terrorism. Couldn't believe how much my life has changed." Watching CNN get abused for all this is absolutely spectacular. Now, of course, the big problem with this will be is that nothing will happen to the person who wrote this thing. They'll go on to write more of their left-wing headlines and will continue to mock them over and over and over again until eventually CNN can't be sold to the highest bidder, which seems to be the point at which they are at now. But let's get to the title of the show today, because a wild scene happened over the course of the last 48 hours. If you had taken an Ambien like 36 hours ago, you would have went to bed thinking that the sky was falling, that the earth was going to end, that nothing was going to be able to stop the Iranians from allowing oil to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, therefore causing oil prices to dramatically skyrocket. You would have thought that when you woke up from your Ambien coma after you got done making a Thanksgiving turkey or whatever the hell people do on Ambien, walk across the Robert Moses Bridge in their pajamas, because Ambien's a terrible drug. Don't take Ambien. It's really not good. You would have thought that the world was ending. Here was Charles Payne describing that earlier yesterday.
We don't have an oil problem. And I think that, Secretary Wright was trying to explain that. This is all speculation. This is all, you can almost argue, manipulation. This is what they call geopolitical risk. There's no formula for it. It could be an extra $10. It could be an extra $20. It could be an extra $30. So when you have a move like that that's not based on fundamentals per se, it could be parabolic, which it is, through the roof. But when parabolic moves like that die down, they usually come down just as fast.
So I guess my big question is short because, a lot of people predicted that the tariffs would hurt the economy.
Right.
You were one of the ones that said, actually, this is going to be good for America. Looking at the war where we're at right now, was this the right call from the president, or do you think there's going to be some risks going in the midterms?
Well, there's always political risk, which is why things like this never get done, right? You have people who want to win elections instead of keeping America safe. This is 1,000% the right move with respect to where Iran was, to the threat to the rest of the world, and to the timing of it. I don't think a lot of folks understand how interconnected our world is. The Greenland move, Panama, Venezuela, all of these things are incredibly important as we move into the next century. And we want to stay the preeminent nation in the world. So remember, oil was $82 when Trump took office. It was $50 when this began. That downward move will resume once this is resolved.
Oil was $82 a barrel before this began. $82 before this began. But I was told that the world was ending, that the sky was falling, that the panicans were out there selling off everything on Wall Street, only to find out now that the price of oil has went up a total of $2. A total of $2. That's right. That's a strange map. Oh, let me move that over here. Yep. In the last 5 days, it has remained almost completely the same. But every news network yesterday led off with the fact that the sky, it did go up because what people have to understand about gas prices and what you have to understand about the price of oil is that when you go to the gas station, you're not paying for the tank of gas you're currently getting. You're paying for the next tank that you're getting. Oil is a speculative market. They're charging you what they think that their next batch is going to cost them. So yes, there was a little bit of turmoil, and I'm sure where many of you live, you did see a spike at the pump. Just wait like a week, and everything will go back to normal. Now that the United States military has guaranteed protection for many of the oil tankers going through the strait off the coast of Iran, there's also a very small island off the coast of Iran that President Trump is planning on either blockading or sending troops into, or some version of that, to ensure that oil can continue to make its way around the world. See, the problem with something like oil is, because it's so global, everything that happens around the globe is going to affect it. It's not like some American company here. It's not like McDonald's. It's not some kind of a commodity in that sense. So when strange things happen around the world, the price is going to fluctuate. Everything will be okay. Yesterday, the markets opened 2% down. As of now, they're half a point up. Not half a point up from the 2% fall, but half a point up from where they fell yesterday. A total of 2.5 points up in the market. Let's check it one more time. I've been checking, going back and forth, because I'll be honest, yesterday morning I definitely freaked out a little. I definitely freaked out just a bit with the Dow Jones being up 0.25 point today, the S&P remaining mostly stagnant, with the NASDAQ up slightly. But they never mention, for example, everyone will remember Pam Bondi when she sat before the House Judiciary Committee and made a complete ass out of herself, talking about how the Dow Jones is at 50,000. The Dow Jones is at 50,000, and therefore I shouldn't have to answer any questions in what can only be described as one of the stupidest PR moves I've ever seen in my entire life. Slightly below New Coke, but slightly above the McRib. Right now, the Dow sits at 47.8. So yes, it's fallen. Will the press throw a temper tantrum, a freak out, when it goes back up again? No, because it turns out markets go up and markets go down. Markets go side to side and backwards and forwards. And that's just what they do. Don't be a panicking. Don't panic sell. If you're looking at your 401k every day, first off, it doesn't matter who's president. You shouldn't really be doing that. That's not the best idea. But of course, Democrats will use whatever opportunity they can present themselves with to slam on the president. I don't know why. Well, I mean, I know why, but there's definitely a way of getting around that. Just by going out and spewing the facts. Right now, the Senate Judiciary Committee is holding a hearing on birthright citizenship. Well, I think we're gonna see who's testifying here right now, and throw it over there, because Senator Schmidt is questioning right now, and he's one of the good ones. So let's see here, guys. We'll be back in 1 second. Here's Jeremy.
Hey everybody, if you're not familiar with, then let me introduce to you Armor Colostrum. Now, I didn't know what colostrum was up until a few years ago. I'd never even really heard of it. And then my wife turned me on to Armor Colostrum. And what colostrum does is it helps regrow your hair. Not gonna lie, that's the reason that I started looking into it. But then I started noticing some other things that I could benefit from. I used to get acid reflux very badly. I used to bloat very badly. It felt like I was 10 or 15 pounds heavier than I was until I made Armor Colostrum a part of my everyday schedule. And now things have changed so very much. Let me introduce to you what Armor Colostrum actually does and what it looks like. In a study measuring immune cell response to toxin, Armor Colostrum performed 32% stronger and faster than other colostrum companies. 400 plus bionutrients activated in your life, in your body, to help regrow hair, strengthen your gut health, regrow your nails, toenails, and fingernails healthy, get rid of fungus, stop bloating, and more. And now you can get yours right now for up to $18 off each and every purchase at tryarmra.com. Promo code LFATV. Click the apply button once you've entered the code and watch your discount fall off. That is tryarmra.com/LFATV. Order now.
Guys, head on over to tryarmra.com and use promo code LFATV. That's tryarmra.com and use code LFATV. Yeah, so we're going to throw it to the Senate Judiciary Committee right now. I'm curious to see what Senator Schmidt has to say about birthright citizenship. Check this out.
Our sovereignty.
I would say so. Mr. Cooper, I want to turn to you. In your brief, you explained that the text of the 14th Amendment suggests more than mere birth is needed for birthright citizenship. And the text says those born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. This is the crux of the case, right? This is what the whole case is going to come down to. Could you just explain again, I know that we've got some members that have come in since you gave your opening statement, what that actually means? What was the public understanding of those actual words at the time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is where the rubber meets the road in the case, absolutely. What does subject to the jurisdiction of the United States mean, and therefore what does jurisdiction mean? And the one thing I think we can say it doesn't mean is simply the laws of the United States. And that's essentially the argument that most of the advocates of universal birthright citizenship advance. If it were that easy, why didn't they just say subject to the laws thereof? They didn't. They used the word jurisdiction, and that's an ambiguous term. But they clearly had an understanding of that term that was related, as I mentioned earlier, and as you did as well, Mr. Chairman, to the complete jurisdiction of the United States, not the kind of temporary and local jurisdiction that a visiting foreigner, and allegiance that a visiting foreigner owes to the United States, because that visiting foreigner has to obey our laws, but rather the complete jurisdiction, the kind of jurisdiction that when the person is away in a foreign country, this country cares about and extends its protection to, complete jurisdiction. And Mr. Chairman, the clearest understanding of what jurisdiction meant was not subject to a foreign power, because the ink on the Civil Rights Act was not even dry when they adopted the 14th Amendment, and clearly the supporters of the Citizenship Clause understood and intended that to mean the same thing. The final point I would make is that the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1866, saying not subject to a foreign power. The 14th Amendment adopted and ratified in 1868. In 1870, the Congress came back around and reenacted the Civil Rights Act of 1866 with the same language, not subject to a foreign power. It's just not credible at all, not remotely credible at all, that Congress didn't understand and mean that being subject to a foreign power, as is a transient foreign visitor, and certainly as is a legal alien, would be entitled to birthright citizenship and to extend that citizenship to a child.
Thank you. Senator Welch.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cooper, if the president's executive order were enforced, would that mean that Mr. Branco and his two brothers, 3 Marines, would not be citizens?
No, it wouldn't,
Why?
because the executive order is on its face prospective only.
Professor Frost?
Oh, well, a couple of things about that. First is
Sorry,
Hey, everybody, if you're not
I really thought that was going to be more exciting. Usually Senator Schmidt is a lot better on that one. We'll break in if somebody interesting decides to speak. I don't really want to hear what Peter Welch has to say. None of you know who that guy is anyway. So, if anything, if there's a good senator, we'll throw it back to that. We'll definitely throw it back to that because I'm curious. But let's move on to Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, who obviously is a front runner for the 2028 presidential nominee. Democrats find themselves in a bit of a precarious situation right now because it turns out that even though Republicans are not so popular. Oh, wait, hold on a minute. Is Mike Lee questioning someone right now? Because that I actually want to see. That's something I would actually want. Yes, he is. We're going to go back to Mike Lee real quick.
Let's go to you first. I want to talk about surrogacy arrangements. How could commercial surrogacy arrangements involving foreign clients, particularly if facilitated by foreign government political elites, end up creating a long-term national security risk for the United States?
Well, you have the reality that if you're granted citizenship and your father is, say, a high-ranking CCP official, you will certainly have the opportunity to vote in elections, apply for government jobs. I think it creates an ambiguity, right, problem of where is the commitment. So that's the security issue. And when you're talking about the scale of numbers, whether it's the Wall Street Journal case or the case in Southern California, you're talking about large-scale numbers. That's the concern.
Right, burrowing into the United States through people who would become citizens. All right, let's shift gears for a minute. Mr. Cooper, in Wong Kim Ark, frequently cited, of course, by proponents of automatic birthright citizenship, the Supreme Court seemed to suggest that domicile was sufficient to render a person subject to the jurisdiction thereof, meaning of the United States. But wasn't the domicile at issue there, the specific type of domicile at issue there, a type of lawful permanent residence, as we might put it in our parlance today, wasn't that a little different than what we're dealing with here? And wasn't that sort of uniquely probative of allegiance and consent of the sovereign? And if so, doesn't that make it inappropriate for use here?
Absolutely, Senator Lee. Wong Kim Ark's holding was clearly that a lawful permanent resident, the Chinese individuals, immigrants in that case, were entitled, their child was entitled to birthright citizenship because they were domiciled. The word domiciled appeared about...
I really thought that was going to be more exciting. Sorry about that, guys. Boy, was I wrong on that one. Boy, I guess a hearing about birthright citizenship shouldn't be seen as too exciting. But hey, what the hell are you going to do? No, we gave it a try. Let's get back to Gavin Newsom, because Gavin Newsom's having a rough time of it. He's having a bit of a rough time of it because while he wants to run for president, it seems like Democrats can't seem to get out of their own way. New polling has just come out that really shakes up the Democratic Party right now. It seems like this from an NBC News poll from the other day shows that basically everyone who could possibly run for president is underwater. Seems like everybody seems to hate everybody. But Democrats are far more hated than everybody else, with Kamala Harris being at a -17 favorability, Gavin Newsom at a -18, AOC and JD Vance running comparatively at -11, and it seems like Marco Rubio is the front runner right now to be president in 2028. We've also got new polling out from that NBC News poll that shows that while the GOP does remain 14 points underwater, it turns out that Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris are less popular than AI and ICE, which is wild. The only thing that polls better for the American people than Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris is the very concept of Iran. Very odd stuff. Now, could it be because now that Gavin Newsom is beginning to get more into the spotlight, we are starting to see some cracks in this ridiculous foundation that he calls his forehead when it comes to what his wife did? See, you always got to look at the wives. You always got to look at the people that are stuck sitting in the background. Like Zoran Mondani's wife, who may or may not be a terrorist sympathizer, in my opinion. Well, it turns out Gavin Newsom's wife decided she was going to cash in on teaching your 5-year-old about sexual education and toxic masculinity.
She reportedly paid herself a massive paycheck while pushing controversial sexuality and gender education in California's school system. The New York Post is reporting Sibyl Newsom leaned on her powerful husband and his education board to push preachy flicks about toxic masculinity into classrooms, all while raking in up to $300,000 every single year through her nonprofit, the Representation Project, and her for-profit outfit, Girls Club Entertainment. The report goes on to say Newsom's Board of Education recommended Sibyl Newsom's films in controversial health education guidance in 2019. Shortly after he became governor, that guidance was later adopted by the state education department and sparked some heated debate for its focus on sexuality and gender identity. Teaching manuals pushed by Newsom's Representation Project include materials like this. Look at your screen. That's a diagram labeled the gingerbread person, used to teach middle schoolers about terms like pansexuality. The revelation comes amid a crisis in California schools, of course, with a recent report card finding 44% of California 11th graders do not meet reading standards. Nearly 70% were below par in math. We've reached out to the governor's office for comment. We're waiting to hear back. They are on a 3-hour time difference, so maybe some of them are just waking up to the news that we're covering you. Call us back. Emily.
Look, having been subjected to the Newsom's impact for so long over there in California, this to me is par for the course. It speaks to the cronyism that has somehow been acceptable and become acceptable, rampant through the Democrat Party, especially one that we were subjected to under the prior administration. And it also speaks to me of the unfortunate dark underbelly of the not-for-profit machine that actually just lines the pockets of those investors. This is why actual good nonprofits work so hard to prove to you that $1 100 cents of which actually goes toward the entity. Now, being in bed, in my opinion, is so much worse with these two, meaning when she is pushing this radical genderbread ideology in the public school system, which, as you said, is so woefully inadequate. So to cut through the chase, the kids there are failing math and reading, but I'm sure they can point out on the body all the different body parts that one person is to have. And this is because the governor's second wife somehow wants it, right? I mean, it's impossible to me to understand why there's no transparency and why the voters haven't yet risen up and said, are you kidding? Isn't this enough? And I'm sure that it will be crickets from them, by the way, regardless if they're sleeping in and enjoying their mimosas, their plump jack mimosas on the governor's dime. Yeah, they won't get back to us.
Ainsley.
Second wife.
Yeah, Kimberly never allowed that.
Yeah, Kimberly Guilfoyle was married to him first.
That was so subtle.
She's wants everyone to buy into this gender and, identity issue deal. Everyone's so sick of it. California's so woke. This is definitely not going to fly around America if he runs for president. But the state.
And that's the key. That's the key. This kind of crap may fly in California, but it's not going to work in places like Georgia. It's not going to work in places like Pennsylvania, who, quite frankly, have moved on from this radical gender ideology that we've all had to sit through for the last decade or so, that many of us got labeled as a phobic istophobes, or whatever the hell it is you want to call it, for pointing out basic reality, pointing out a bunch of basic realities. One thing now that I think would help us in 2028 is the Save America Act. And John Thune, and I want to put this as bluntly as I can. He sucks. He really sucks at this. He sucks so bad at this. He could be one of the worst Senate Majority Leaders we've ever seen. If it wasn't for the natural gas industry and the oil industry in South Dakota, nobody would know who the hell this guy is. But unfortunately, well, I guess fortunately, there's a thriving business up there. So he's able to procure all of the lobbyist dollars required to become a Majority Leader. We're going to get to John Thune in just a second. As a matter of fact, Mike Johnson is taking questions on the Save America Act right now. Let's throw it to Speaker Johnson to hear more about it.
President speak almost on a daily basis now about the Save America Act. We heard him just last night at his press conference. This has passed the House. This would require voter IDs at the ballot box, proof of citizenship when people register to vote. But now Trump has thrown a wrinkle into this, saying that it should also include things like no men and women's sports and no gender transition surgeries for children. So how do you anticipate you would tackle that? Are you going to re-vote on a new version of the Save America Act?
Well, I was talking with the president about that last night. Clearly, we all agree on those objectives, and it is aptly named the Save America Act because those are two additional provisions that are about 90-10 issues with the public, and they expect and anticipate that Congress would do the right thing and protect the country with those provisions. Can we squeeze it into the existing bill and send an amended version over to the Senate? I think we can do that in the House. We're looking at the mechanisms to do it. If the Senate were able to move the existing legislation that we've already sent over, I suppose it's possible they could amend it there and send it back to us in a different form, and we pass it then. I have to work with Leader Thune on that. I don't tell him how to run the Senate, and he doesn't tell me how to run the House. But we do, coordinate as best we can. And I know I would assume that every Republican in the Senate is in favor of the provisions you just named. Half of them, not half of them, almost all of them are co-sponsors on the original SAVE Act. I think they could get it done. They just need Democrat votes, or they have to go down the road of the talking filibuster, and there are real challenges to both of those things. So we're certainly have our fingers crossed they can get it done.
I think Leader Thune did say that he thought you should take it up again and re-vote.
Did he say that?
I believe he did.
All right. Hear what you asked for.
President Trump has said that if Congress can't send him the Save America Act to his desk, then he's not going to sign anything else into law. Is this the end of legislating for this cycle as we know it?
No, it's not. And I'll talk with him about that. We'll work with him, as you know, under the Constitution. If legislation was sent to the president's desk and didn't sign it for 10 days, it would become law automatically. So, but I understand what he's trying to emphasize: the importance of this priority, how critical it is to not just to him, but to the American people and to all of us. And so, it takes no convincing among House Republicans to agree to that priority. But I think he wants to send a signal to the Senate in particular that he's very serious about this, and I think the signal's been received.
Okay. Let's change gears to the midterms. I remember right before the 2024 election, we were in Hellertown, Pennsylvania, at a Ryan McKenzie event at the old Steel Club. I don't know if you remember. It's probably all a blur to you because you go to so many of these campaign events. But at that event, you told me that you were going to win the House, the Senate, and the White House. And that turned out to be true. And you said the way that you were going to do it was through this new coalition that the Republicans were building, which included winning more Hispanic votes, more black votes, more Jewish votes, and union workers.
Of course, there he is speaking about the Save America Act. John Thune just came out and blatantly said he has absolutely no plans of moving this thing forward, despite the fact that we all want it. The problem is that John Thune out there looking like Fred Gwynn. All my boomers will understand that one. Out there looking like Herman Munster or the judge from My Cousin Vinny. He believes that actually nobody really wants this thing passed, that all of us that are talking about the Save America Act are actually just paid agitators. We're actually just paid to say this thing. No one's paying me to push the Save Act, John Thune. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Maybe if you got your head out of your ass and left Washington, D.C. once in a while, got off your ranch in South Dakota, you'd be able to figure this out too.
Run a risk of being on the wrong side of President Trump and your resistance to do this talking filibuster, tying the Senate in knots for weeks?
We don't have the votes either to proceed, get on a talk.
Your job is to find the votes. That's your job.
Talking filibuster, nor to sustain one if we got on it. But that is just a function of math, and there isn't anything I can do about that. I mean, I understand the president's got a passion to see this issue addressed, as we all do.
Does he understand that, though?
Well, we've conveyed that to him, but we will continue to make that argument because I think it's important that everybody understand that this really is about the votes, it's about the math, and I'm for better or worse, I'm the one who has to be the clear-eyed realist about what we can achieve here. And so we'll continue to convey that, and I think that we're going to have the fight on the floor. We're going to vote on this, we're going to put it up, and we'll give the Democrats the opportunity to cast their vote on whether or not they think non-citizens ought to vote in American elections.
Bro, see, this is a function of politics that drives me absolutely insane because he doesn't think he has because he doesn't believe he has the votes. He's not going to bring it to the floor because he doesn't want the vote. He doesn't want the bill to go down. No, you giant. First, why is he so tall? He's like a foot taller than a person should be. Poor Katie Britt is standing behind him. You can't even see her. But the point is to bring it to the floor and get the votes on the record. The reason why he's not going to do that is because John Thune is put in power by 3 people. He was put in power by 3 people and 3 people alone. Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Mitch McConnell. And those are the 3 who do not want to pass this because they are all collectively 150 million years old and don't think that the American people ought to get what the American people want. Which is exactly why this bill is not going to go to the floor. Despite all of our best efforts, despite us ranting and raving and tweeting, and Scott Pressler going to his damn office. Scott's got to go. He's the only one that can look him in the damn eye. It's never going to see the light of day. And as you heard Speaker Johnson talking about there, with the new provision to keep men out of women's sports, it's going to be even harder. It's going to be even harder to do this. It's just cowardice. It's just and it's one of these things like there have been like, the people on the right, like the hard right people, the Fuentes, the Groyper crew, who are out there sitting there saying, let it all burn. And then let Republicans all lose, and then we can get some of these rhinos out, and we can start fresh. And when I hear John Thune saying things like that, is that a bad strategy? Maybe. But what are we getting by leaving guys like John Thune in office? Nothing. Nothing. Some people are not ready. Some people are not ready for the war that is coming. They're not ready. They're not, in the words of Michael Corleone, some of these people just aren't wartime consigliaries. They're just not ready to do what needs to be done. We know President Trump is. He doubled down on the SAFE Act earlier today. Before we get to that, Mike Lindell.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 6-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
Guys, head on over to MyPillow.com and use promo code LOUD. That's MyPillow.com, promo code LOUD, for up to 80% off everything on the website. That's MyPillow.com, promo code LOUD. So, look, as President Trump said yesterday when he was speaking at the Florida Republican Party, no other president could get any of the shit done that he's done. That's a direct quote. Not me saying it. Dalton Allen on X says, was thinking of making my first ever t-shirt. I survived the great oil crisis of 2026. That's funny as hell. You know what? That's so funny. I'm not even going to take it. Dalton, that's funny as hell. I like that. I survived the great oil crisis. Yeah. 36 hours it lasted. 36 hours. But as I was saying about that, I had to get that in there just because that's funny as hell. President Trump doesn't care. He's going to continue to push this. And he's going to continue to push this because it's what the American people want. Because it will secure our elections. As you heard Speaker Johnson get asked earlier, Trump says he's not signing a single bill until the Save America Act passes the Senate. And he's putting his foot down. And if there's one thing we know about the president is that when he does stuff like this, he gets exactly what he wants. President Donald Trump said that he will not be signing any bills until the Save America Act is passed in the Senate and made into law. Now, the problem with that is he's got to make sure. He's got to make sure that he does it. You can't make that kind of threat and then step back on it. Here was Carolyn Levitt talking about it from the podium earlier today.
Trump is urging Congress to pass the Save America Act, one of the most critical pieces of legislation in our nation's history. The Save America Act is overwhelmingly popular with all Americans because each provision is rooted in common sense. The Save America Act has 5 simple requirements as requested by the President of the United States. Number 1, voters have to show ID to cast a ballot in an American election. Very simple. 90% of Americans, including more than 80% of Democrat voters, agree with this. Number 2, the Save America Act will require all voters to show proof of citizenship in order to register to vote in American elections. Again, this is popular and rooted in common sense. Only American citizens have the right to vote in American elections. But after Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed tens of millions of illegal aliens into our country, it's more important than ever to ensure that only American citizens are registering to vote on our nation's voter rolls, and Congress needs to pass this. Number 3, the Save America Act abolishes the incredibly unsecure practice of universal mail-in ballots, which throw the door wide open for fraud. Importantly, the Save America Act maintains exceptions for Americans to use mail-in ballots like for illness, disability, military, or travel reasons. The bipartisan 2005 report of the Commission on Federal Election Reform, chaired by, of all people, former President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker, concluded that, quote, absentee ballots remain the largest source of potential voter fraud, and it is time for Congress to finally address this. Number 4, the Save America Act permanently bans men from competing in women's sports. President Trump signed a landmark executive order upholding the promise of Title IX and ending this dangerous and unfair practice. But now it's time for Congress to codify this into law. Number 5, the Save America Act bans transgender mutilation surgery for children. Again, President Trump signed a common sense executive order to do this and kept his promise to the American people, but now Congress needs to do the same and codify it. It's well past time for Democrats in Congress to stop perpetuating the radical and false claim that you can somehow change a child's sex. You cannot. Passing the Save America Act is the most important thing that Republicans and, frankly, Democrats can do to strengthen election integrity and protect our democracy. It's what the American people elected Republicans to do, and they must deliver on it as soon as possible. The president is calling on Congress to get the job done and send this historic piece of legislation to his desk immediately for signature. So with that today, I will...
Well, yep, she's right, and that's probably why they're not going to do it. I would say banning children from being mutilated would probably fall under the, quote, Save America Act. I mean, what the hell else are we doing here if we're not doing that? But I think President Trump should just go out of his way to attach a rider to it. Attach the rider to the budget or to the DHS funding or to a myriad of the other nonsense bills that attempt to be passed in Congress that actually don't really do anything. That actually don't really do anything. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Guys, before we keep going, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, share the video out all over the place. We are rocking, we are rolling. Before we keep going, head on over to lfatv.us. That's lfatv.us. That's your home base, your mothership, your landing pad for all things LFA TV related. Check out the LFA TV store. And while you guys are there, consider becoming a monthly donor over at LFA TV. That's how we keep the lights on over here. It's how we keep the big guy fat and happy. So, that's me, by the way. Guys, we really do always appreciate the support. Every dollar you guys get goes right back into the network. So a couple more stories that I want to make sure that I get to before we close out today. Number one, Georgia voters are heading to the polls in a special election to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene. Voters in the 14th Congressional District in Georgia. So if that's you, get out and vote to elect a replacement for Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who left office amid a high-profile breakup with President Trump. The race includes a couple of candidates, 22 of them, across all parties, including independents, according to Ballotpedia. The district is heavily Republican-leaning. However, Republicans Sean Harris, Clayton Fuller, Nikki Lama, Colton Moore, and Brian Stover are at the top of the list. At the top of the pack. And just so you guys know, right now Republicans hold a razor-thin majority in the House, which has been made even smaller by the fact that Rep. Kevin Kiley of California decided to become an independent earlier this week. I'm pretty sure Mike Johnson, right now, because of this special election, has a 2-seat majority. Count them, 2. Take Thomas Massie, 1 seat. So if someone dies in the next couple of hours, we could get Leader Hakeem Jeffries. So we've got to pray none of the members of Congress who are all older than Methuselah die. That's where we've left ourselves. That's where we've left ourselves by not aggressively standing up for policies that the American people actually want. We did that. We did. Well, we didn't do that. People like Mike Johnson have done that. So, such is life. Such is life. A nice story that I want to make sure that I get to because I feel like everything on this show is doom and gloom all the time. I feel like we get very doomy and gloomy, but a nice story here. Out of our friends down under, where they give people Vegemite sandwiches. I still don't understand what that song means, but that's, it just plays into it. Australia has granted Iranian soccer players asylum after Trump called the prime minister. Now, asylum is something that has always been very controversial, particularly in this country, particularly over the last several years, where it has been used and abused by nefarious people, where it has been used for every reason under the sun, whether you get hit with a hurricane or your country just sucks or you don't have any money or whatever the hell your reasoning might be. But this is actually the reason for asylum claims. The Australian Labor government has granted asylum to 5 players from the Iranian women's soccer team following a call with President Trump to Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. On March 10th, the Australian Home Affairs Minister, Tony Burke, confirmed that the women were granted humanitarian visas to avoid persecution in their home countries for refusing to sing the Iranian national anthem at one of their Asia Cup games currently being held in Australia. It's kind of weird that Iran and Australia are playing in the Asian Cup, but that's kind of the way soccer works. Burke said conversations about granting asylum began in the early hours of March 9th President Trump revealed in a Truth Social post on the same day that he had called the prime minister and was assured the players would be taken care of and that other team members were on their way to asylum in the country. The team came under protection after their final match in the Asian Women's Cup against the Philippines and Australia the night before. Players on the 26-member squad were labeled by the Iranian state media as wartime traitors and threatened with punishment after they refused to sing the country's national anthem before a loss in South Korea last week. Now, whatever your take is on asylum, this is what it's actually used for. You have Iranian soccer players who want to stand up to their government, and then they get threatened with persecution when they get home for not singing the national anthem. We know what's going to happen. Look, let's be honest here. Let's call a spade, okay? And if this bothers you, I'm not going to alter the opinion, the facts of the world to, because I know there's people watching right now. How you doing? I'm sure the punishment for the Iranian women who decided to not sing the national anthem will be quite different than the punishment for the Iranian men if they don't want to sing the national anthem. Don't like that? Not my fault. Go talk to the Ayatollah's son, who somehow looks exactly like him. Many people think he's been swapped out with an imposter, but I am not going down the Candace Owens route. This is what asylum is actually for. It's for people that know that they're probably going to be raped and killed when they go back to their home country for not singing what I have to assume is probably a pretty crappy song anyway when they go to another country. I do have to laugh, though. I do have to laugh when it comes to Iranian soccer. I'm happy these women don't have to go back to Iran. Thank God. Thank God. I do have to laugh because I don't know if you guys know this or not. I don't know if you're big soccer fans. I am. I know I'm alone here. In a couple months, Iran is going to come to America for the World Cup. That's going to be weird. That ought to be real weird. We'll see what happens. Awkward. Guys, it's 4 p.m. I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in. We will be back live tomorrow at 4 p.m. Hannah Faulkner is coming up next right here on this network, guys. Until tomorrow, everybody, stay loud.